Welcome to Tales from the Trenches Tuesdays. Today, it is my absolute honor to have Matt Lang with me all the way from Australia. Matt has worked for some of Australia's most iconic and enduring charities, including the Salvation Army, Royal Children's Hospital Foundation, Lifeline Queensland, and the Mater Hospital Foundation. Service to the community is in Matt's DNA. Prior to commencing in his role as head of fundraising and marketing for the Variety of the Children's Charity Queensland, Matt pioneered the role of fundraising manager at the Brisbane Broncos and the first full-time role of its kind in the National Rugby League. During his 3 years at the Broncos, he helped the club meet and exceed its capital campaign target for its new training and community center. Matt believes that humanity's search for meaning can be found in great philanthropy and is focusing the remainder of his career on helping people create their own magnificent legacy. So welcome, Matt.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, Jack.
So I was doing some research. In Australia, the nonprofit sector accounts for about 4 to 5% of your GDP. While in Canada, the nonprofit sector is about 7 to 8%. So it's almost double or 50% more. So I was just trying to think of, if you have any idea as to why that might be.
Yeah, look, I'm not sure, Jack, to be really honest. I do know that certainly in the last 20 to 30 years that the not-for-profit sector has certainly grown significantly within Australia, and that's reflected in the number of, registered charities and whatnot that are within Australia. There's currently around about, rough numbers here, but about 60,000 registered charitable organisations within Australia. That's right. Organisations that can provide a tax deductible receipt for the donation. But I think it's somewhere
we have about 90,000.
90, is it? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So and on over and above that, there's a roundabout. Again, I haven't checked the numbers for probably a year or two, but probably upwards of 600,000 just general not-for-profit organisations as well. So look, I don't know what sort of sitting behind that disparity between, say, Australia and Canada, other than to say that it's certainly growing in the Australian context, and we currently there's a drive at federal government level to double philanthropic giving over the next sort of 7 to 8 years by 2030. So there is very much a focus on, I guess, elevating, supporting organisations and growing and developing that not-for-profit sector as a whole. So I guess I can only see more growth there rather than a reduction in that.
So what is the Fed's strategy to double? How are they going to get there? It's real nice to say that you want to double it, but
yeah, look, absolutely. And we in the Australian Parliament, we have these structures, if you like, called productivity commissions. And so what the government does is they task the productivity commission to go and explore how to basically construct or to bring about these changes in policy and direction. So literally, as we speak, that productivity commission has been formed, and they're going through that process of engaging with the not-for-profit sector and other relevant stakeholders to, I guess, shape up that strategy to deliver that outcome. So it's kind of a little bit too early to tell, Jack, as to what's sort of going to be behind, or what are those strategic priorities going to be that are going to drive that result. But I think, broadly speaking, it's a positive thing that the government are taking that view that they want to encourage the growth of charitable giving in general. And I guess from a charity perspective, that the sector is quite excited about that focus from government and that appetite, I guess, to really drive, generosity and giving in general.
Yeah. The Canadian government tried something similar 5, 6 years ago. Maybe it might have even been like 10, where they tried to give like a super tax deduction for first-time donors, right? That gave, I think it was a minimum of $1,000. But the reality is that most fundraising, the bigger dollars, aren't at the guys at the $1,000 and getting new donors. It's much more at the top end of things, and those folks didn't enjoy any more of a break than they did beforehand. So I don't think that program necessarily worked, but it was a great exercise to kind of see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, well, look, I think, and again, it could just well be, government talking points here, but I think, from what I have read, that, anything and everything's on the table in terms of ideas and policy that might sort of nurture and grow philanthropic giving within Australia. So
that's amazing.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah. So before we went live, we were chatting a little bit about technology, and I was just marveling how neat it was. The two of us are half a world away and speaking as if we're, just down the street from each other or in the same building even. And I'm just marveled by technology. So how do you see fundraising as a profession kind of moving in the next 5-10 years, or even, listen, maybe there might be a third generation of fundraisers in the Matt Lang family?
Oh, look, quite possibly. I guess to answer that question, Jack, in terms of what do I see in the future, I think given the velocity and the speed at which, technology and change is evolving, I kind of I almost find it impossible to put some sort of crystal ball in front of me and predict, this is going to be happening and that's going to be happening. But I guess I would probably answer that by speaking to what I would hope to see the profession in that sort of 5-year, 10-year, 3-generation, I guess, pathway. And a big thing for me, I think, that I'd love to see more of, certainly in the Australian context, even in 5 years' time, is that there's a greater understanding of the fundraising and philanthropy sector. I think, we've still got a way to go to educating certainly the Australian community that the fundraising and philanthropy sector is a bona fide and legitimate profession, and something that is professional, and it's not just a matter of sort of, throwing ideas out there and hoping for the best. So I hope that there's a deeper understanding about the profession of fundraising itself, and probably as an extension of that, that there would be a greater level of respect for the sector too. I think there's quite a lack of understanding, I think, sometimes between communities and the public, and even at a board level, around what's realistic from a fundraising perspective and what can actually be achieved. Even the old chestnut around cost of fundraising and overheads and all of that. The same chat that I know happens in North America certainly happens in Australia, and I find it fascinating that people would think that, people that are successful in business that would run an organization that would have IT infrastructure costs, electricity costs, training costs, that they somehow think that charities should run without all of those things, or that somehow magically those things are just funded. So there's still some
As
work.
a matter of fact, charities who spend less on those things are rewarded, right? Because it's less of the overhead. So the whole goal is to cut as much overhead as you possibly can. Where in successful companies, they throw more resources into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, we have some organizations over here that kind of actively go to market by talking about the fact that, every dollar that you donate goes to the cause because someone has underwritten the costs, to actually run the administration.
Right.
Well, ultimately, someone's still paying for that, right? But it doesn't help the narrative that you should be trying to reduce every single dollar that you spend to fund the work of fundraising and philanthropy. Should we be great stewards of the money that donors give us? Absolutely we should. But, we should also be able to, feel okay about funding our costs and making sure that we're delivering, I guess, a service and an experience that's professional, and that, is reliable and consistent, et cetera, et cetera. Probably, Jack, if I could just take one quick moment, you talked about
Sure.
3 generations time. What does that look like? I guess for me, I've turned 48 a few months ago, and I've been in the sector for 20 years. So I kind of think, I've got maybe a solid 20 years to go. But I'm really on a mission to inspire greater levels of generosity and giving donors just really great donor experiences. Because I think, and you touched on this in the intro, I'm absolutely of the belief that when people have a great experience of philanthropy, it really taps into that idea of people's search for meaning. And I think that we can really tap into this special thing where if people have a great experience of philanthropy where, it's positive for them, they get to truly, they have a clear line of sight to the impact of their giving, that, it's an amazing thing to be generous. And so I hope in 3 generations' time that fundraising and philanthropy are absolutely flourishing and people are giving and having a great experience through that giving.
Yeah, and I think that there's kind of a monumental shift. It used to be this is our organization and these are our needs. And I think we're slowly moving, and I think rightfully so, to the donor and asking what their needs are and how their needs then fit with your organization. So it kind of is turning it right on its head. Even though you're paid to represent the organization, it's really the donor's objectives that you're trying to fulfill.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think I talk about the delicate dance between the donor's aspirations and the needs of the organization. And it is a bit of a back and forth dance sometimes, but I think you're absolutely spot on, Jack. And I think great fundraisers have sort of woken up to the fact that, it's not about just sort of, and without being crass, kind of vomiting, this big spiel over the donor about we need this and we need that, but it's actually about truly asking great questions and getting a great understanding of what their, what it is that they aspire to achieve through their giving, and then finding that middle ground around their aspirations and the needs of the organization.
Wow. Well, Matt, this has been absolutely amazing. I thank you so much for your time. If folks wanted to get hold of you and to connect with you, what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, sure. Look, they can get in touch with me via LinkedIn. If they just type in, search Matthew Lang, Variety, the children's charity, they'll be able to track me down that way. So that's probably the best way. They can reach me via email as well. Can I give out my email address? Or
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes.
Yes, perfect. So it's Matthew with 2 T's .lang, Lang, at varietyqld.org.au.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you, Matt. Thank you so much. This has been a hoot.
Yeah, no, I've absolutely loved it, Jack. I appreciate you, offering me the opportunity to have a chat to you. It's been fantastic. It's just out of interest, this is my sort of debut podcast. So first time I've been involved in a podcast, so new experience for me, and I've absolutely loved it.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Yeah, great.
Hi, folks. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button right here.